Anderson stands frozen at her brother's promotion party as her parents announce a family cruise to Hawaii. "Everyone in the Peterson family will be there," her father exclaims. When Anderson asks about her ticket, her mother's smile drops. "You don't fit into this family," she says coldly. The room falls silent. Anderson's brother smirks, while guests shift uncomfortably. Little did they know, the modest house they're celebrating and the one her parents have lived in rent-free for 5 years is legally Anderson's property, and she's had enough of their betrayal. I never expected to be the black sheep of the Peterson family. Growing up in our modest Cleveland neighborhood, it became clear early on that my brother Jake was the golden child. My parents, Janet and Thomas Peterson, never tried to hide their favoritism. While Jake received praise for average grades, my academic achievements were met with indifference. "That's nice, Anderson," my mother would say before quickly changing the subject to whatever Jake was doing. Our home was comfortable but never extravagant. My father worked as a sales manager for a local manufacturing company, and my mother was an administrative assistant at the community college. They weren't wealthy, but they made enough to provide us with the necessities. Despite this, there always seemed to be extra money for Jake's hobbies and interests, while mine were too expensive or impractical. "Jake needs these baseball cleats for his future," my father would say. "College scouts look for athletes." Meanwhile, my request for a graphing calculator for my advanced math class was met with, "Can't you share with someone?" Those things cost a fortune. The pattern continued throughout high school. When Jake got accepted to Ohio State with a partial scholarship, my parents threw a massive party and invited everyone they knew. My acceptance to Cornell, with a nearly full academic scholarship, warranted only a perfunctory dinner at the local Applebee's. "Cornell is so far away," my mother complained. "I don't understand why you can't stay closer to home like Jake." College was when I truly began to forge my own path. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously while maintaining a full course load in business and finance. I waited tables at a local restaurant on weekends, tutored other students during weeknights, and worked at the campus bookstore between classes. Sleep became a luxury, but my determination never wavered. During my junior year, I secured an internship with a prestigious real estate investment firm. My supervisor, Carolyn, became my first real mentor. She saw potential in me that my family never acknowledged. "You have a natural talent for this business, Anderson," she told me, after I identified a promising investment opportunity that others had overlooked. "You see angles that experienced professionals miss." After graduation, I was offered a position at the same firm. I worked tirelessly, learning every aspect of the business. By 26, I had saved enough to partner with Melissa, a colleague who shared my vision, to start our own boutique real estate investment company. We began small, focusing on undervalued properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. Our business grew steadily. We made smart investments and developed a reputation for integrity and insight. By my 29th birthday, our company, Cornerstone Investments, had a portfolio worth over $15 million. We employed 12 people and had expanded into commercial real estate development. Throughout this time, my relationship with my family remained strained. My successes were downplayed. My visits home marked by subtle digs and backhanded compliments. "Real estate is just glorified house flipping," my father would say. Not like Jake's corporate career with benefits and stability. 5 years ago, everything changed. My father called me in a panic one evening, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. He had been laid off after his company downsized, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments. The bank was threatening foreclosure. "We don't know what to do, Anderson," he admitted. "We've never faced anything like this before." It was the first time my father had ever come to me for help. Despite years of emotional neglect, I couldn't bear the thought of my parents losing their home. I consulted with Melissa, and we devised a plan. Through our company, we would purchase my parents' house from the bank and allow them to stay there while they got back on their feet. They wouldn't know I was involved. All paperwork would be handled through Cornerstone Investments. The plan worked perfectly. My parents were relieved when their guardian angel investor agreed to let them stay in the house if they maintained the property. They assumed some anonymous businessman had seen an investment opportunity. I never told them the truth, hoping that one day they might appreciate me for who I was rather than comparing me to Jake. For 5 years, I paid the property taxes and insurance, while my parents lived there for free. I only asked that they cover the utilities. It was my way of supporting them, while maintaining my dignity. I didn't want their gratitude. I just wanted their respect. My 30th birthday arrived on a crisp fall day. I had planned a small dinner at a nice restaurant and invited my parents, Jake, and a few close friends. My parents arrived 45 minutes late, already looking at their watches. "We can only stay for the appetizer," my mother announced as she air-kissed my cheek. "Jake has a big job interview tomorrow, and we promised to help him prepare." I forced a smile and nodded, swallowing the hurt that threatened to rise in my throat. "Of course," I said. "I understand. Jake's interview is important." They left before the main course arrived, barely touching their appetizers. My friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one mentioned their abrupt departure. After they left, Melissa squeezed my hand under the table. "You know you deserve better than this, right?" she whispered. I nodded. But part of me still hoped that someday, somehow, I would earn my parents' approval. Little did I know that my breaking point was just around the corner. The text came from Jake on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mom and Dad throwing me promotion party Saturday. Family expected to attend. No congratulations on my recent business acquisition. No pleasantries, just an expectation of attendance." I stared at my phone for several minutes, debating whether to make an excuse. Cornerstone had just closed on a major commercial property, and I had legitimate work I could claim needed my attention. But something inside me, that stubborn hope that never seemed to die, pushed me to accept. "I'll be there." "What time?" I texted back. 6. "Don't be late," came the immediate response. Saturday evening arrived, and I pulled up to my parents' house precisely at 6. The driveway was already filled with cars, forcing me to park a block away. As I walked to the house, I noticed fresh landscaping and new exterior paint. My parents had obviously invested in improvements to the home they didn't own. I straightened my shoulders, plastered on a smile, and rang the doorbell of my own property. My mother answered, martini in hand, her face already flushed from celebration. "Anderson, you made it." She stepped back to let me in, her eyes quickly scanning my outfit. I had worn a simple but elegant black dress with pearl earrings. "You look professional." The house was packed with extended family, neighbors, and Jake's colleagues. I recognized my Aunt Susan and Uncle Bill from Pittsburgh, cousins I hadn't seen in years, and several of my parents' longtime friends. The dining room table was laden with expensive catering, and a bartender was mixing cocktails in the kitchen. I headed for the bar, ordered a glass of white wine, and began circulating through the crowd. Most people greeted me warmly enough, though several seemed surprised to see me. "Anderson, I didn't know you'd be here," my cousin Tara exclaimed. "It's been ages. What are you up to these days?" Before I could answer, my mother appeared at my elbow. "Anderson works in real estate," she said dismissively. "Nothing exciting. Have you heard about Jake's promotion? He's been made vice president of marketing at TechSphere. At only 32. "That's wonderful," Tara replied, her eyes darting between us uncomfortably. "It certainly is," my mother continued. "Jake has always been the smart one in the family. I always knew he'd go far." I sipped my wine silently, used to these subtle jabs. After my mother moved on to another group, Tara leaned in close. "Are you really just in real estate?" she asked quietly. I smiled. "I own a real estate investment company. We manage a $15 million portfolio." Tara's eyes widened. That's incredible. Why doesn't your mom? It's complicated. I cut her off gently. Let's just enjoy the party. Throughout the evening, I tried several times to engage with my parents, but each attempt was quickly diverted. When I mentioned our company's recent acquisition, my father nodded distractedly and then excused himself to refresh his drink. When I offered to help my mother with the food, she patted my arm and said Jake's girlfriend Amanda was already handling it. I found myself standing alone near the living room window, watching my family celebrate without me. The room had been redecorated since my last visit, with new furniture that must have cost thousands of dollars. A large flat-screen television dominated one wall, and expensive artwork hung on another. My parents seemed to be doing quite well for people who supposedly couldn't afford their mortgage 5 years ago. A sharp tapping on glass drew everyone's attention. My father stood in the center of the room, champagne flute raised high. "Everyone, may I have your attention, please?" he called out. The room quieted. We're gathered here today to celebrate an extraordinary achievement. My son, Jake Peterson, has been promoted to vice president at one of the most innovative tech companies in the country. Applause rippled through the room. Jake stepped forward, basking in the attention, his arm draped around Amanda's shoulders. "Jake has always made the Peterson name proud," my father continued, his voice thick with emotion. "From his earliest days, we knew he was destined for greatness. He's carried forward our family legacy with intelligence, determination, and class." I took another sip of wine, trying to ignore the familiar sting of exclusion. And to celebrate this momentous occasion, my father's voice rose dramatically. "Janet and I are thrilled to announce a surprise." My mother stepped forward, beaming. "We're taking the whole Peterson family on a cruise to Hawaii next month." Excited murmurs filled the room. Relatives exchanged delighted glances. 7 days of luxury, my father continued. The perfect way for our family to celebrate Jake's success together. Everyone in the Peterson family will be there. Without thinking, I stepped forward. "That sounds wonderful," I said, genuinely touched by the gesture of inclusion. "When should I request time off work?" The room fell silent. My mother's smile froze, then slowly dropped from her face. She exchanged a quick glance with my father. "Oh, Anderson," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "This is for family. You don't fit into this family." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. I felt as though someone had slapped me. Around the room, guests shifted uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at me. Jake, standing behind my parents, made no attempt to hide his smirk. "I see," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Thank you for clarifying." I placed my half-full wine glass on a side table and walked calmly toward the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. As I closed the front door behind me, I heard the murmur of conversation resume, my public humiliation already becoming yesterday's news. In my car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, not yet trusting myself to drive. 5 years of supporting my parents. 30 years of seeking their approval. And this was what it amounted to. "You don't fit into this family." For the first time in my life, I wondered if that might actually be a good thing. The week after Jake's party passed in a blur of meetings and property inspections, I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and taking on tasks I would normally delegate. Melissa noticed, but didn't press, simply bringing me coffee and occasionally reminding me to eat. Friday afternoon, she perched on the edge of my desk after everyone else had left for the weekend. "Want to talk about it yet?" she asked gently. I looked up from the spreadsheet I'd been staring at for the past hour and sighed. "They're planning a family cruise to Hawaii. Everyone's invited except me. My mother told me, in front of everyone, that I don't fit into the family." Melissa's eyes widened. "On top of living rent-free in your house for 5 years? That's beyond ungrateful. That's cruel. I keep wondering why." I admitted. "Dad lost his job 5 years ago. They were in financial trouble. I helped them. Why do they still treat me like I'm nothing?" compared to Jake. Maybe it's time to find out, Melissa suggested. We have connections. We could discreetly look into your father's employment situation. See what's really going on. I hesitated. Investigating my own family felt wrong, but so did being treated as an outsider after everything I'd done for them. Just basic information, I decided. Where he's working now, how long he's been there. Nothing invasive. Melissa nodded. Leave it with me. I know people who know people. Monday morning, Melissa appeared in my office doorway, folder in hand and an odd expression on her face. You should see this, she said, closing the door behind her. The folder contained information about my father's current employment status. 3 years ago, he had been hired as a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company, a position that came with a 6-figure salary plus bonuses. He hadn't been unemployed for long after his layoff. He's been making good money for 3 years, I said slowly, while living rent-free in my house. There's more, Melissa said quietly. I also pulled their credit reports. They have substantial savings, Anderson, and they've been helping Jake financially. She showed me evidence of regular transfers from my parents' account to Jake's over the past 2 years. Large sums that coincided with Jake's purchase of a luxury condo downtown. They helped him with the down payment, I realized, while I've been paying their property taxes and insurance. I'm sorry, Melissa said. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, turning over this new information in my mind. My parents weren't struggling financially. They had been taking advantage of my help while using their own money to support Jake. The realization left me feeling hollow. On impulse, I opened my laptop and logged into the email account we'd set up for communication between Cornerstone Investments and my parents. I wanted to review the original agreement, to remind myself of the terms they'd agreed to. As I scrolled through the correspondence, a new email caught my eye. It had been sent from my father's personal account to the company email by mistake. The subject line read, "Moving plans after cruise." Heart-pounding, I opened it. Janet, don't forget to forward this to the Cornerstone Management Company. We should give them notice before we leave for Hawaii that we'll be vacating the property after the cruise. Since Jake's promotion means we can finally move into his spare condo unit, no point in dealing with that investment company anymore. They'll probably raise the rent anyway, now that the neighborhood's improved. Better to just leave them with the property and whatever maintenance it needs. I checked, and we're not legally obligated to pay the utilities that are in arrears since we're not the owners. Let's discuss at dinner. Love, Tom. Attached was a draft notice indicating they planned to abandon the property with 3 months of unpaid utility bills. They had no intention of telling me directly or honoring their agreement to maintain the property. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. This was deliberate deception. I had been willing to accept that my parents might never love me equally, but I never thought they would actively take advantage of me. Driven by a need to understand the full extent of their betrayal, I drove to my parents' house the next morning, knowing they would both be at work. Using my key, I let myself in, feeling strangely like an intruder in a property I legally owned. The house was immaculate, with new furnishings I hadn't noticed during the party. A large leather sectional dominated the living room. The kitchen had been upgraded with stainless steel appliances and granite countertops, renovations they had never mentioned or asked permission for, despite our agreement that any substantial changes to the property required approval. In my father's home office, I found financial statements showing their healthy savings account balance. Next to them was a brochure for the Hawaii cruise, with a handwritten note from my mother. Can't wait. So glad we can finally take a proper family vacation without worrying about Anderson making everything about her. In a moment of desperation, I opened the bottom drawer of his desk, where he had always kept important family documents. Beneath folders of insurance policies and tax returns, I found a manila envelope labeled Family Photos. Inside were pictures I had never seen. Photos of Jake's graduation, family holiday gatherings, and casual backyard barbecues from which I had been excluded. They had been having family events without inviting me. Deeper in the drawer, I found a shoebox containing newspaper clippings and printed articles about Cornerstone Investments' successes. My parents had been tracking my career from a distance, collecting evidence of my achievements while publicly dismissing them. Most devastating was a stack of letters tied with string. They were awards and recognition notifications sent to my parents' address over the years. Academic honors, business awards, even an invitation to speak at my university's commencement ceremony. All unopened, all hidden away. The final blow came when I found an email chain printed out between my parents and Jake. In it, they mocked what they called my pathetic attempts to buy our affection and my desperate need to be part of the family. Jake suggested they milk the situation as long as possible before moving on. My mother had replied, "At least we're getting something useful out of her finally." I sat on the office floor surrounded by evidence of years of deliberate emotional manipulation. They had hidden my achievements, excluded me from family events, and actively conspired to take advantage of my generosity. And now they planned to leave me with unpaid bills and a damaged property. The hurt was so profound it had transcended into numbness. This wasn't neglect or favoritism. This was calculated cruelty. And for the first time in my life, I allowed myself to feel something I had always suppressed. Anger. Pure, justifiable anger. As I carefully returned everything to its place and left the house, I made a decision. It was time to stop seeking approval from people who would never give it. It was time to stand up for myself. The next morning, I called Melissa and asked her to meet me for coffee before work. The local cafe was quiet, most of its customers grabbing to-go orders on their way to the office. We took a table in the corner, away from other patrons. "I need your advice," I said after explaining what I'd discovered. "Not just as my friend, but as my business partner." Melissa listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly troubled. As I laid out the extent of my parents' deception. "They're planning to abandon the property after their cruise," I concluded, "leaving unpaid utility bills and who knows what else for me to deal with. They've made unauthorized renovations. And worst of all, they've been deliberately hiding my achievements and mocking my attempts to connect with them." "That's beyond dysfunctional," Melissa said, shaking her head. "That's emotional abuse. Anderson. Plain and simple." "I know," I admitted. "I've been making excuses for them my entire life, but I can't anymore. I need to know my options for the house." "Legally, it's straightforward," Melissa replied. "The property is owned by Cornerstone. They're essentially tenants who violated multiple terms of their agreement. We could evict them with proper notice." "What about selling the property?" I asked. Melissa considered this. "The market in that neighborhood is strong right now. We could list it and probably sell quickly for a good profit." "But what about your parents?" I stared into my coffee cup. "That's where I'm struggling. Part of me wants to give them what they deserve after how they've treated me. Another part feels guilty about potentially making them homeless, even temporarily." "You've supported them for 5 years," Melissa reminded me. "That's more than generous given how they've treated you. But whatever you decide, I'll support you." That afternoon I met with Lawrence, our company's attorney. He reviewed the original agreement with my parents and the evidence of their planned departure. "From a legal standpoint, you're entirely within your rights to sell the property," he confirmed. "They have no lease. Only a month-to-month arrangement that requires 30 days' notice to terminate. The fact that they're planning to abandon it anyway strengthens your position." "And the renovations they made without permission?" I asked. "Since they didn't have authorization, they can't claim any compensation for improvements to the property. If anything, unauthorized structural changes could be grounds for damages if they affected the integrity of the home, though that seems unlikely." I nodded slowly. "I need to think about this carefully. It's not just a business decision. Take your time," Lawrence advised, "but document everything in case this becomes contentious." That evening, I spread out 5 years of financial records related to my parents' home, the property taxes I'd paid, the insurance premiums, maintenance costs for necessary repairs. It totaled over $100,000 of support I had provided while they secretly saved their money and helped Jake buy a luxury condo. I thought about the hidden letters and awards, the family events I'd been excluded from, the casual cruelty of my mother's words at the party. "You don't fit into this family." Then I remembered something my grandmother had told me before she passed away, when I was still in college. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Without consequences, there's no growth. My grandmother had been the only family member who encouraged my independence. She had left me a small inheritance that helped start my business, believing in me when no one else did. What would she advise now? By morning, my decision was made. I would sell the house quickly, give my parents legal notice, and use the proceeds to finally cut financial ties with them completely. It wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect and establishing healthy boundaries. I called Melissa to outline my plan. "I want to find a buyer quickly. Someone who wants immediate possession. I might have the perfect candidate," she replied. "Remember Brad Turner? He sold his tech company last year and has been looking for investment properties in established neighborhoods. He mentioned wanting something he could move his parents into." "Set up a meeting," I said. "And Melissa? I want this handled professionally. No matter how I feel personally, this is still a business transaction." Brad Turner turned out to be enthusiastic about the property. After viewing it while my parents were at work, he made a fair offer, requesting possession in 30 days. "My parents are moving from Seattle next month," he explained. The timing would be perfect. We drew up the paperwork, and I signed the sale documents with a strange mixture of relief and sadness. This house represented the last connection I had with my family, and I was severing it deliberately. The final step was drafting the formal notice to vacate. Lawrence helped me word it professionally, detailing the sale of the property and the 30-day requirement. There was no mention of my personal connection. It came from Cornerstone Investments. As the property owner. "Do you want me to arrange service of the notice?" Lawrence asked. I shook my head. "No. I'll make sure they receive it myself." That evening, I drove to the post office and sent the notice via certified mail, requiring signature upon receipt. It was done. In 30 days, the property would belong to Brad Turner, and my parents would need to find a new place to live. As I drove home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen my own well-being over the desperate need for my parents' approval. It hurt, but beneath the pain was something unfamiliar. A quiet, steady sense of self-worth that no one could take away. 3 days passed before my phone rang with my parents' number. I had been expecting the call since I knew the certified letter would have been delivered by then. Still, seeing their name on my screen sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I answered on the third ring, keeping my voice neutral. "Hello? Anderson." My father's voice was frantic. "There's been some kind of mistake. We just got a notice saying our house has been sold and we have to move out in 30 days. I've been calling the company listed, but they keep referring me to their legal department." "It's not a mistake," I said quietly. There was a moment of confused silence. "What do you mean?" "The house was sold by its rightful owner, Cornerstone Investments. My company." Another silence, longer this time. When my father spoke again, his voice had changed. "What are you talking about? Cornerstone is your company? You're behind this?" "I bought the house 5 years ago when you were facing foreclosure," I explained, keeping my voice level despite my racing heart. "I've been paying the property taxes and insurance ever since, allowing you to live there rent-free while you got back on your feet." "That's impossible," he spluttered. "Why would you do that without telling us?" "I wanted to help without making you feel indebted," I replied. "I thought eventually you might come to value me as much as you valued Jake." I was wrong. "This is absurd." His voice rose. "You can't just sell our home out from under us. It was never your home, Dad. Not legally. And according to the email you sent to our company account by mistake, You were planning to abandon it after your family cruise anyway. The silence that followed told me he recognized his error. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from outrage to bargaining. Anderson, be reasonable. We're your parents. We can't possibly find a new place and move in 30 days. Not with the cruise coming up. The Hawaii cruise? For the whole Peterson family? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. The one I don't fit into? Your mother didn't mean that, he said quickly. She was just excited about Jake's promotion. You know how she gets. I know exactly how she gets, I replied. Just like I know about the 3 years you've been employed at Bradshaw Pharmaceuticals, while pretending to still be struggling. Just like I know about the money you gave Jake for his condo while I paid for your housing. You've been spying on us? Now he sounded indignant. No, Dad. I've been opening my eyes. My voice remained calm, despite the emotion churning inside me. The notice gives you 30 days, which is more than you were planning to give Cornerstone before abandoning the property. I suggest you use that time to find a new place to live. We'll fight this, he threatened. We have rights. You're welcome to consult an attorney, I said. But the documentation is all in order. The property belongs to Cornerstone Investments, and always has. Good night, Dad. I ended the call and sat in the sudden silence of my apartment, shaking slightly but oddly proud of myself for maintaining my composure. The next morning, my mother called. Her approach was different, her voice tearful and pleading. How could you do this to us, Anderson? After everything we've done for you. We raised you, put food on the table, gave you opportunities. You did the minimum required as parents, I replied. And for the past 5 years, I've been supporting you without recognition or gratitude. We never asked for your help, she cried. Actually, you did. 5 years ago, when Dad called about the foreclosure, we didn't ask you to buy our house behind our backs. Would you have accepted my help if I'd offered it openly? I asked. Her silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, I continued. You were willing to accept help from a faceless corporation, but not from your own daughter. Because accepting my success would mean acknowledging that I've accomplished something without your support. This isn't about your success, my mother sniffed. This is about loyalty to family. Family? I repeated. The same family that excluded me from gatherings? The same family that hid my awards and accomplishments in a drawer? The same family that openly mocked my attempts to connect with you? What are you talking about? I found everything, Mom. The hidden photos of family events I wasn't invited to. The unopened awards. The emails between you, Dad, and Jake about milking my generosity. Another silence. Then, you had no right to go through our private things. I had every right to inspect a property I own, I corrected her. Especially after discovering you planned to abandon it with unpaid utilities and possible damage. Where are we supposed to go? She asked, her voice small now. That's not my problem anymore, I said, surprised at how easily the words came. You have 30 days and sufficient savings to find a new place. I suggest you start looking. The next week passed in a flurry of messages from extended family members. Apparently, my parents had spread their version of events, casting themselves as victims of their ungrateful daughter. Most relatives took their side without question, sending me texts and emails expressing their disappointment in my actions. Only Aunt Susan, my father's sister, reached out with a different perspective. There's always 2 sides to a story, she said when she called. And knowing your parents, I suspect there's much they're not saying. Are you okay, Anderson? Her unexpected kindness nearly broke my composure. I'm getting there, I managed. Thank you for asking. Your parents have always played favorites, she said bluntly. I tried to talk to my brother about it years ago, but he wouldn't hear it. Whatever happened, I'm sure you had your reasons. 2 weeks after the notice was delivered, my father appeared at my office without warning. My assistant tried to stop him, but he pushed past her into my office, his face flushed with anger. This has gone far enough, he announced, standing in front of my desk. "You've made your point. Now stop this nonsense and cancel the sale." I looked up from my computer, keeping my expression neutral. "The sale is final, Dad. The new owners take possession in 2 weeks. You can't do this to your own parents." "I'm not doing anything to you," I replied. "I'm simply selling a property that belongs to me. You still have time to find a new place." "With what money?" he demanded. "We can't afford rent in this market. According to your bank statements, you have substantial savings," I pointed out. "Not to mention your 6-figure salary. You can afford a rental while you look for something permanent." His face darkened. "You have no right to know about our finances, and you had no right to take advantage of my generosity for 5 years while secretly mocking my attempts to be part of the family." He changed tactics, his voice suddenly beseeching. "Anderson, be reasonable. We're your parents. We made mistakes. But what child doesn't have complaints about their upbringing? This is extreme." "This isn't about my upbringing," I said. "This is about 5 years of deliberate deception while I supported you financially. This is about planning to abandon a property with unpaid bills after taking a luxury family cruise that I wasn't welcome on. This is about respect, Dad. Something you've never shown me." "I'll sue," he threatened. "I'll tell everyone what you've done." "Go ahead," I said, standing up. "I have documentation of everything. The original purchase, the agreement you signed, the support I've provided, and the evidence of your planned abandonment of the property. Do you really want all of that made public?" The fight seemed to drain out of him suddenly. He looked older, deflated. "Jake said you wouldn't actually go through with it," he muttered. "He said you're all talk." "Jake has never understood me," I replied. "Neither have you." After he left, Melissa came into my office. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Your father looked upset when he left." "I'm better than I expected," I admitted. Standing up for myself feels right. That evening, Jake called. It was the first direct contact we'd had since his promotion party. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded without preamble. "Mom and Dad are freaking out." "Selling a property that belongs to me," I replied. "Something they were aware was a possibility when they signed the original agreement. They didn't know it was your company. That doesn't change the legal reality. Look." His voice shifted to a condescending tone I knew well. "I get that your feelings were hurt at my party. Mom shouldn't have said what she did. But this is an extreme overreaction. This isn't about the party, Jake. This is about 5 years of taking advantage of my help while deliberately excluding me from the family. That's dramatic. Nobody excluded you." "Really? What about the family gatherings I was never invited to? The cruise that's for family only? The emails mocking my attempts to connect with you all?" He paused. "You weren't supposed to see those. But you wrote them," I pointed out. "All of you did. That's the point, Jake. What you do in private reveals who you truly are. And now, I know." "Whatever," he dismissed. "The real issue is that Mom and Dad need a place to stay. They were counting on moving in with me after the cruise, but I can't take them right now." This was new information. "Why not?" "I thought that was the plan." He hesitated. "My financial situation is complicated at the moment. The condo is leveraged pretty heavily. I can't add 2 more people to my expenses right now." "So you want me to continue supporting them?" "Just until after the cruise," he hedged. "Until I can figure something out." "No," I said simply. "I've been carrying this family financially for 5 years while being treated as an outsider. That ends now. Mom and Dad have the resources to find their own housing. So do you. My involvement is over." "You're being selfish," he accused. "No, Jake. For the first time in my life, I'm being self-respecting. There's a difference." After ending the call, I felt a strange sense of peace. The house would transfer to its new owners in 2 weeks. My parents would need to find new living arrangements. and I would finally be free of the financial and emotional burden I'd been carrying for years. It wasn't the family relationship I had always hoped for, but it was the reality I needed to accept. 4 days before the new owners were scheduled to take possession of the house, I received a text from Jake. Family meeting. Marino's restaurant. Tomorrow at 6. Don't be late. I considered ignoring it, but decided this conversation needed to happen face to face. I confirmed I would attend, then called Melissa. They want a family meeting tomorrow, I told her. Are you going? She asked. Yes. I need to say things I should have said years ago. Do you want me to come with you? I could wait at the bar, give you moral support. Her offer touched me. No, but thank you. This is something I need to handle alone. Just remember, you don't owe them anything, she reminded me. Not your time, not your money, not even your presence. I know. But I owe myself closure. Marino's was a mid-priced Italian restaurant where our family had occasionally celebrated special occasions when Jake and I were younger. I arrived exactly at 6, finding my parents already seated in a corner booth. They looked tired, with dark circles under their eyes and a defeated slump to their shoulders. Jake wasn't there yet. Anderson. My father nodded stiffly as I sat down opposite them. Where's Jake? I asked. Running late. My mother replied. Not meeting my eyes. He said to start without him. A waiter approached, but my father waved him away. Just water for now. We're waiting for one more. We sat in uncomfortable silence until my mother finally spoke. The movers come tomorrow. We've had to get rid of most of our furniture. There's nowhere to put it. I'm sorry it's been difficult, I said neutrally. My father's jaw tightened. Are you? You caused this situation. No, Dad. Your choices caused this situation. 5 years of deception while taking advantage of my help, planning to abandon the property without notice, excluding me from family events while benefiting from my support. We never asked you to buy our house, he insisted. You asked for help when you were facing foreclosure, I reminded him. I provided that help in the way that made the most sense financially. You signed an agreement with Cornerstone Investments. The fact that you didn't know I was behind the company doesn't change the legal reality. It's still a betrayal, my mother said quietly. Like hiding my awards in a drawer? I asked. Like planning family gatherings without inviting me? Like telling me I don't fit into the family while living in a house I paid for? She flinched but said nothing. Jake arrived, 20 minutes late, sliding into the booth beside me with a nod of acknowledgement. Sorry I'm late. Traffic. He didn't sound sorry. Let's get this sorted out. Anderson, this has gone far enough. The new owners take possession in 4 days. Mom and Dad have nowhere to go. That's not accurate, I replied calmly. They have savings. Dad has a good job. They have options. Hotels are expensive, my mother protested. And rentals want first and last month's rent plus security deposit, which you can afford, I pointed out. You've been living without housing costs for 5 years. We had other expenses, my father argued. Like helping Jake with the down payment on his condo? I asked. While I paid your property taxes and insurance? Jake shifted uncomfortably. That was different. How? I challenged. Explain to me how it's different. They're family, Jake said, as if that explained everything. Family helps family. Am I not family? I asked. Because that's what Mom said at your party. That I don't fit into this family. My mother looked down at her hands. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I just meant. You've always been different. Independent. Not needing us the way Jake does. I never needed you because you made it clear from childhood that Jake was the priority, I said. I learned to be self-sufficient because I had to be. That's not fair, my father protested. We treated you both the same. I looked at him in disbelief. Is that really what you believe? That you treated us the same? We did our best, he insisted. Your best was throwing Jake a massive party for getting into Ohio State, while my Cornell acceptance warranted dinner at Applebee's. Your best was helping him with the down payment on a luxury condo, while hiding my business awards in a drawer. Your best was excluding me from family events while living in a house I provided. My father's face flushed. You're twisting things. Am I? Then explain the emails I found. The ones where you and Mom and Jake mocked my pathetic attempts to be part of the family and discussed milking my generosity. My mother had the grace to look ashamed. Jake stared at the table. You weren't supposed to see those. My father finally said, That's your defense? Not that you didn't write them, but that I wasn't supposed to see them? The waiter approached again, and this time my father ordered a scotch. My mother asked for a glass of white wine. Jake and I both requested water. When the waiter left, Jake leaned forward. Look, we all said things we shouldn't have. But the immediate issue is that Mom and Dad need somewhere to stay after Friday. My place isn't an option right now. Why not? I asked. That was the plan according to the email I found. They were moving in with you after abandoning the house. Jake looked uncomfortable. My financial situation is complicated. He's underwater on the condo, my father interjected. The value dropped after he purchased it, and he's been having trouble at work. I'm not underwater, Jake protested. I'm just temporarily cash poor. Because you overextended yourself trying to maintain an appearance of success, I said. Not everyone can be Little Miss Perfect with her own company, Jake snapped. I built that company through hard work and sacrifice while you were getting parental subsidies, I replied. The difference is, I earned my success. You expected yours to be handed to you, just like everything else in your life. That's enough. My father interrupted. This bickering isn't solving anything. You're right, I agreed. So let me be clear. The house has been sold. The new owners take possession on Friday. You need to be out by then. What you do after that is not my responsibility. How can you be so cold? My mother asked, tears forming in her eyes. We're your parents. Parents who excluded me, mocked me behind my back, and took advantage of my help for 5 years, I pointed out. Parents who were planning to abandon the property without notice, leaving unpaid bills for me to deal with. Parents who told me I don't fit into this family while living in a house I provided. I didn't mean it, my mother whispered. I was just excited about the cruise and Jake's promotion. You meant it, I said quietly. You've all meant it for years. I've just finally accepted it. My father's drink arrived, and he took a large swallow before speaking again. What do you want from us, Anderson? An apology? Fine, we're sorry. Now will you help us? I don't want anything from you anymore, I said. That's the point. For years, I tried to earn your approval, your respect, your inclusion. I've finally accepted that's never going to happen, and I've made peace with it. What I want now is to move forward with my life without the burden of one-sided financial and emotional support. My father's shoulders slumped suddenly, and he looked older than his 60 years. I don't understand when things went so wrong between us, he said quietly. My father never approved of me either, you know. Nothing I did was ever good enough for him. I swore I wouldn't be that kind of father. I hadn't expected this vulnerability. Yet you repeated the pattern with me. No, with Jake, he corrected. I put all the pressure on him to succeed, to validate me. You were always so self-sufficient, so capable. You didn't seem to need anything from us. I needed to be seen, I said simply. To be valued for who I am. Not compared to Jake, or ignored. My father was the same way, he continued almost to himself. Always comparing me to my older brother. Always finding me lacking. I spent my whole life trying to prove myself to him. Even after he died, I was still trying. Maybe that's why I pushed Jake so hard and overlooked you. Because you reminded me of everything I couldn't be. The admission hung in the air between us, unexpected and raw. "That doesn't excuse how we treated you," my mother said softly, "or how we took advantage of your help. I was so focused on supporting your father and helping Jake that I never stopped to see what you needed. Or what I accomplished," I added. "Yes," she acknowledged. "We were wrong, Anderson. Terribly wrong." Jake had been uncharacteristically quiet, but now he spoke up. "I always thought you had it easy," he admitted. "No pressure, no expectations. I never realized that came with its own pain. And I was jealous of your success. You made it look so effortless, while I was struggling to live up to Dad's expectations." "It wasn't effortless," I said. "I worked 3 jobs through college. I built my business from nothing. I just did it without support because I knew better than to expect it from any of you. We've failed you," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "As parents, as family. I see that now." The simple acknowledgement, after years of dismissal and gaslighting, broke something open inside me. Tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed welled up. "Yes," I managed. "You did." We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of 3 decades of dysfunction settling around us. Finally, my father spoke again. "We don't deserve your help," he said. "But we're asking for it anyway. Not permanently. Just until we can find our feet." "And what would be different this time?" I asked. "Everything," my mother said. "We want to try to be the parents you deserved all along, if you'll give us that chance." I looked at each of them in turn, seeing for the first time the broken people behind the parents who had hurt me. It didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me understand it. And understanding was the first step toward healing. "I'll think about it," I said finally. As I drove home that night, I realized something had shifted. The anger that had propelled me forward was giving way to something else. Compassion, not for what they had done, but for the wounded people they were. People who might, with proper boundaries, be capable of change. The day after our family meeting, I made a decision. I called my parents and asked them to meet me at the office after hours. They arrived looking apprehensive, as if expecting more bad news. "I've been thinking about our conversation." I began once we were seated in the conference room. About the generational patterns of favoritism and emotional abuse. About how hurt people hurt people. My father nodded soberly. "I've been thinking about that too. About how much I became what I swore I never would." "I believe you want to change," I continued. "But words are easy. Real change requires commitment and action. We're willing to do whatever it takes," my mother said. "We know we've lost your trust. Here's what I'm offering," I said. "Cornerstone owns a small rental property on Maple Street. It's nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom townhouse, but it's clean and in a decent neighborhood. I can let you stay there for 3 months while you find jobs and permanent housing." Their eyes widened in surprise. "There are conditions," I continued. "First, you'll pay utilities. Second, you'll attend family therapy sessions with me weekly. Third, at the end of 3 months, you'll either sign a standard lease at market rate or move to another property. No extensions. No exceptions." "Family therapy?" my father questioned. "Yes. If we're going to have any kind of relationship moving forward, we need professional help to address the decades of dysfunction. That's non-negotiable." My parents exchanged glances before my father nodded. "Those terms are more than fair." "Thank you, Anderson." "I'm not doing this out of obligation," I clarified. "I'm doing it because I believe in second chances. But this is the only one you'll get." "We understand," my mother said quietly. "What about the cruise?" I asked. My father looked embarrassed. "We canceled it. It didn't seem right to go on a luxury vacation while facing homelessness. And it wouldn't have been the whole family anyway." My mother added, "Not without you." The next day, I gave them the keys to the townhouse and the contact information for Dr. Eleanor Matthews, a family therapist specializing in adult parent-child relationships. Our first session was scheduled for the following week. The townhouse was modest compared to the home they'd been living in, but it was well-maintained and in a convenient location. I helped them move in the few possessions they'd kept, mostly clothes and personal items. The furniture had been sold or given away. "It feels strange starting over at our age," my mother commented as she arranged framed photos on a side table. I noticed that several included me, pictures I hadn't seen displayed in years. "Sometimes starting over is the only way forward," I replied. Our first therapy session was uncomfortable. Dr. Matthews asked each of us to describe our perception of the family dynamics, and the disparities in our accounts were telling. My father minimized his favoritism toward Jake. My mother downplayed the exclusion I'd experienced. I struggled to articulate the depth of hurt without sounding vindictive. "This is normal," Dr. Matthews assured us. Family members often have vastly different experiences of the same events. Our goal is not to establish a single true version, but to acknowledge and validate each person's emotional reality. Over the following weeks, we delved deeper. My father spoke about his own father's emotional abuse and how it had shaped his parenting. My mother admitted to enabling the favoritism because it was easier than challenging my father. I acknowledged my part in maintaining unhealthy dynamics by continuing to seek approval I knew would never come. "Breaking generational patterns is hard work," Dr. Matthews told us, "but recognizing them is the first step. The question now is, what kind of relationship do you want to build moving forward?" It was a question I had never considered. What kind of relationship did I want with my parents? Not the fantasy of unconditional love and approval I had clung to for years. Something more realistic, more honest. "I want mutual respect," I said finally. "I want acknowledgement of who I am, not who you wished I would be. I want honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." My parents nodded. "We want to know you," my mother said. "The real you, not the version we projected onto you. And we want to earn back your trust," my father added. "However long that takes." Outside of therapy, small changes began to appear. My father found a job at a local pharmaceutical distributor, less prestigious than his previous position but steady work. My mother took a part-time administrative role at a medical office. They began paying their own way, living within their means for the first time in years. One evening, about 6 weeks after they moved into the townhouse, my father called me. "I found something I think you should have," he said. "Could you stop by after work?" When I arrived, he handed me a box containing the awards and recognition letters they had hidden away over the years. "We should have celebrated these with you when they happened," he said. "I'm sorry we didn't." It was a small gesture, but significant. Jake remained distant at first, uncomfortable with the shifting family dynamic. The revelation that our parents were in therapy, acknowledging their favoritism and working to change, threatened his position of privilege. But as my parents stabilized their finances and built independence, his perspective began to shift. "I think I've been living in a fantasy world," he admitted when we met for coffee 3 months after the confrontation, "trying to maintain an image of success while drowning in debt. Watching you build something real, while I was just creating appearances. It's not too late to make changes," I told him. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about, actually. I'm considering a career change. Something more aligned with what I actually enjoy rather than what impresses other people. I wondered if you might have advice." It was the first time Jake had ever asked for my input, treating me as an equal rather than a competitor. As the 3-month mark approached, my parents began looking for permanent housing. They found a small apartment within their budget and signed a lease, beginning the following month. "We want to thank you," my mother said during our final therapy session. "Not just for the temporary housing, but for forcing us to confront the truth about ourselves and our family. It's been painful but necessary. We know we can't erase the past," my father added. "But we hope to build a better future, one where you're fully included and valued." "I'd like that," I said, surprised to find I meant it. The day they moved into their new apartment, I helped carry boxes and arrange furniture. The space was modest, but cheerful, decorated with items they had carefully selected rather than the expensive showpieces they once thought necessary to impress others. "We're thinking of hosting a small dinner next weekend," my mother said tentatively. "Nothing fancy, just family. Would you come?" "I'd like that," I repeated. 1 year later, we gathered at my parents' apartment to celebrate my father's birthday. Jake was there with his new girlfriend, a kindergarten teacher he had met through volunteer work. My parents had maintained their financial independence, living comfortably within their means. Our weekly therapy sessions had transitioned to monthly check-ins, then to as-needed meetings. After dinner, as we sat around the small living room with coffee and cake, my father raised his mug in a toast. "To second chances," he said. "And to Anderson, who had every reason to write us off but gave us the opportunity to become better people instead. To family," I countered. "The real kind. The kind that's earned through respect and honesty, not assumed through blood." That night, driving home to my apartment, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The hurt hadn't disappeared entirely. Deep wounds leave scars. But the sharp pain had dulled to an occasional ache, a reminder of lessons learned rather than a still open wound. I had discovered something powerful. Self-respect requires boundaries, even with family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is to stop enabling destructive patterns, even when it feels cruel in the moment. And sometimes, people can change if given the right motivation and support. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth was never dependent on my parents' recognition. It had always been there, waiting for me to claim it for myself. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones to protect your own well-being? What helped you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Comment below with your experiences. If you found value in this story, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Your support helps me continue creating content that connects and resonates. Thank you for listening to my journey. May you find the strength to honor your own worth, even when those closest to you fail to see it.